Hello, EduMagicians. Welcome to the EduMagic podcast with your host, Dr. Sam Fessich. Dr. Sam is a professor of education, author of EduMagic, and a pumpkin spice latte fan. This podcast is designed for pre-service teachers. Remember, friends, teaching doesn't begin at graduation, but during that first class at 8 a.m. Let's get this party started.
Hi, I'm Chris Nesi from the House of EdTech podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to right now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to episode 43 of the EduMagic podcast. My name's Dr. Sam Fessich. During today's episode, I interview Chris Nesi, the host of the House of EdTech podcast. He's an amazing advocate for teachers everywhere, and he's always sharing great tools, advice, and strategies that are applicable in the classroom right away. Before we get started, I have a quick reviewer shout out. This one goes to Prof. Humes, Profehumes, who left a 5-star review. The title is So Encouraging. I love listening to this podcast, even though this is year number 2 in the classroom for me. I'm always taking away great advice, feeling encouraged, and most importantly to me, feeling connected. Teaching can feel really isolating at times, but this helps so much. Thank you so much, Prof. Humans, for leaving a great review. I really enjoy reading these, so if you haven't left your review yet, please do so. It really is encouraging and really fun to learn from all of you what you think of the show and how it's impacting you in your teaching world. Also today we have a quick student-teacher spotlight. This student-teacher spotlight is with Rebecca Nichols. Now, if that name sounds familiar, it's because she was on a previous episode of the EduMagic podcast, and she shares about the power of digital presence. So take it away, Rebecca.
As a teacher candidate at Cal U, I've learned the power and impact of a strong online digital presence. Every teacher candidate needs to engage on at least one social media platform. Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, you name it. Its power will transform your teaching and learning. Sometimes it might seem like we're taught to fear sharing too much of our lives on social media. What if a future employer disapproves of what I post? What if my students' families see this? When it comes to professional accounts, the connectivity of social media is on your side. The more positivity you post, the better individuals get to know you as a friend, classmate, inspiration, colleague, and teacher. But why? How? Why me? And why now? Here are 4 top-notch reasons why you should get connected today. Building a positive and professional digital presence helps you stand out from your peers. It shows that your passion for the profession runs deep and that you're serious about being a leader. These accounts create exposure and allow you to establish yourself in the education community early on. Beyond that, it's your way to show the world who you are as a teacher and the kind of energy and innovation you bring to the table every day. This is your teaching journey, not anyone else's. Make your accounts fun and on message at all times. Establishing an online portfolio of your involvement and accomplishments is like a digital resume. When it comes time for that first interview or networking opportunity, choosing high-impact activities to showcase will be a breeze, or maybe even a walk down memory lane. Professional social media accounts are platforms to share lessons or projects you developed for in the field, volunteer opportunities like family and community collaboration events, work experiences, and more. There's no rules of what should be shared. Share the moments that light your teacher heart on fire. But remember, always keep it positive, never negative. Networking, perhaps one of the most frightening terms for a teacher candidate. This one's right up there with interview and evaluation. They say that first impression handshakes are now replaced by Google searches. So my question to you is, what will an employer think when they search your name online? Think about that for a moment. If those initial thoughts made you cringe, this one's for you. Networking allows teacher candidates to connect with educators and professionals in the field. A professional presence takes the guesswork out of that first impression. Sure, it puts you on a screen for all to see, but is that so bad when what you have to share is phenomenal? Certainly not. When you're in college soaking in all the best practices and tricks of the trade, you're growing as a person and as a professional. Own what you've learned and put it to the test in the classroom. Show that you're making the most out of your college years and that you plan to make your time outside of college even more impactful.
I want to thank Rebecca for taking the time to send me a wonderful Voxer message about the power of digital presence and how teacher candidates can take control of what they post online and show themselves in a positive and professional light. But let's get to today's interview with Chris Nesi. Here we go.
Hey, Edumagicians. Welcome back to another episode of the Edumagic podcast. My name's Sam Fessich, and I am pumped to have the OG Chris Nesi here today to share with us all kinds of insights and great things that when it comes to teaching. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Sam, I am super pumped to be here too. This is very exciting because I was talking to you before you even made this a thing. So this is really exciting.
I know you're like the godfather of the podcast world, and I'm just so excited to have you on the show.
All right, let's have some fun. Let's do this.
Let's do this thing. So I met Chris, I'm going to say last fall, but I started listening to podcasts last summer. And I feel really like old saying that because I feel like podcasts have been around forever and they just entered my world about a year or so ago. And they have changed my life when it comes to professional development and learning. Find information that I want to learn more about and I can dive deeper and get to know some of the show hosts. And it's like that I have a friend in the car on the way to my commute and I can learn so much. And the House of EdTech is definitely one of those shows that's in my rotation every week. So I just want to thank you for producing an awesome show every week.
It is my pleasure to produce what you say is an awesome show. And you're just getting into this and podcasting has changed your life. Just imagine what it's done for me.
How long have you been doing it?
I created the House of EdTech and launched it in January of 2014.
And I'm sure you've learned a lot along the way, right?
I have learned, I have grown, I have failed, I have had successes. I've experienced the gamut of learning, really. And
that's what learning and teaching is all about, trying something new, seeing what sticks, and being able to speak into your own professional development. I listened to an episode by Dan Kreines with The Leader of Learning, and he said that he's the biggest fan of his own show because that he can own his PD through his podcast. Do you kind of feel the same way with yours?
Absolutely. I've said for years when people ask about this sort of topic, I make the House of EdTech and any podcast I'm on, I make it for me. I am also my show's number one fan, and I'm also, learner zero. We talk about patient zero. I am learner zero based on the conversations I have and the topics that I choose because I get to try to talk to the people that I want to speak to, ask the questions that I want, and get what I want from them. It just so happens I turn around and I share that with whoever else might want to listen to that conversation.
I love that. That's so cool to hear. So let's jump right into some of our questions here. Can you tell my listeners a little bit about your teaching story? What has inspired you to become an educator? And then how did you grow into producing a podcast for teachers?
Well, my teaching journey began in the late 20th century. Might have been 1996, 1997. I was a sophomore or a junior in high school, and I made the decision at that early age that I wanted to be a teacher. And my first choice was to follow in the footsteps of my dad, who is also a teacher. I wanted to be a high school math teacher, just like dear old dad. And then I got to college, and after 2 years of being a math major, he said to me, son, if you're going to be in school for 8 years, you better be a doctor, not because you took all these math classes twice. So I was not on the right track mathematically. While I was good at high school math, I'm still good at high school math. I love algebra and geometry and solving for X and all those fun things. That's not the math you learn in college. And you never teach the math that you learn in college. So I decided I know I want to teach and coach and do those things. And what's my next favorite subject? And I chose history and social studies and graduated with a bachelor's in history, not with the teaching credentials because I had my own struggles as an undergrad. So I then found myself in a post-bac program. And after having been in the quote unquote real world with a quote unquote real job, I was able to go back to school and take Saturday classes and do what I needed to do to get certified post-bac, which led to my master's in curriculum and instruction. And my formal teaching career began when I student taught back in the fall of 2007. And here I am in 2019, getting ready to enter, I think, my 12th year of excellence or something like that.
I love it. Your 12th year of excellence. Oh, that's so nice to hear. I love that. That's a great story, how you found that you want to teach, but maybe math isn't the right subject for you. So moving to a different area and then going into post-bac. And that's some people's journey too. They figure out after they graduate, oh, wait, I think I want to be a teacher and I think I might be really good at this. And then just finding themselves in a post-bac program and then learning more, getting a master's or some certification areas, and then rocking it and teaching in there. Several years of excellence. So thank you so much for sharing that out.
And part of what I wanted to also share is the fact that, I persevered. I had a taste of working other jobs in retail, and, I was a vice president of sales for a document imaging company. So there's that technology piece. And I was not happy. I was making money, I was going out and I was able to do things on the weekend, and I was having fun with life, but the work was not fulfilling. And this was 10 years, I'm 25, 26 years old, and I wasn't happy doing that. So again, I was fortunate enough to find a way to, no matter what happened, come hell or high water, I was going to get myself into education and teaching and do what I knew that my, for lack of words, my calling was. I was called to do this, and I can't see myself doing anything else.
And I'm sure a lot of teachers, as they're listening to this, are nodding their heads. And that is a true calling. It's something that you feel in your heart, and it tugs on your heartstrings that you need to be working with children and impacting their lives in some way.
That's like, I always think it takes a special calling to teach middle school, which I did for a little bit, but that was not for me. So I was not called to that specific area.
My friend Aaron Lewis always says a phrase, something like, you might be certified, but you're not qualified to teach that area. You know that you're certified pre-K to 6, but you love those little learners and you rock that pre-K, kindergarten, 6th grade, maybe not so much. So you might be certified to teach those areas, but know where your secret sauce is and where you jive the best.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm certified K through 12 with my social studies content area certification. So I could go get a job in 1st grade if I had to, but I'd be doing it like Arnold Schwarzenegger in Kindergarten Cop, and it would certainly be fun, and it would be education through play, which maybe that comes around again. I don't know.
That could come around in a high school class, right? Education through play.
Oh, we certainly have fun and play at the high school level.
You have to. So thinking back to those days when you were getting your post-bac and you were student teaching, I think you said 2007. Do you have a favorite teaching moment from those college days? Anything that impacted you as a learner, whether it was something that went really well or something that you learned from that you'd like my listeners to know about?
Well, just to go back to when there was a point in my undergrad, I was in school for 5 years, and there was that point. So this is a bit of a sad story. There was that point where I realized I am not getting into the education program, and it's like a step back. It was like a punch in the gut, a slap in the face when I knew I was going to graduate with a bachelor's in history and not be able to student teach and do all those things. So that's like, the end of my sophomore year, my junior year, where my GPA wasn't where it needed to be. And I had to, face that reality of, I'm going to finish this college degree and not be where I want to be in the world, and, doing the things that I thought that I wanted to do. And it took a lot of self-reflection, and there were some, there were some sad nights and a lot of tears and, a lot of aggravation and frustration. But again, obviously I sit here today and, I got through that and was able to find the opportunities. And, when the post-bac program presented itself, I was a changed student. I had been working. I was in a really great relationship with, Caitlin, who is, now my wife. And, she was a big supporter and, pusher of me to basically be successful, or she was going to dump my butt. So, I always look at it as, everything happens for a reason. I was thrilled and excited to drive up to Caldwell, New Jersey, which is where I did my master's and my post-bac. I was living in Jackson, New Jersey at the time by Great Adventure. So for you geography folks, I was basically driving through all of New Jersey on Saturday mornings. And I was happy and thankful that I had the opportunity to do that. And I took those 3 and 4 hour classes on Saturdays and, was still working full time when I student taught. I was still working full time. I was an assistant manager in a Dollar Tree where I was able to work my schedule to teach during the day. I was in a high school that operated from, I believe it was 7:30 to 2:30 was the time. And then I was at work, by 3:30, and I was working till, 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, still having to do lesson plans, do the grading as I took over as the full-time teacher in the classroom, and still I was working 2 full-time jobs for the price of one.
That's so true. I think your story about not getting into the ed program, I think a listener needed to hear that today. And that happens. It happens often. Not everybody goes to college and gets their teaching degree and starts off teaching right away whenever they graduate. It takes people get there in different ways. Just like there's lots of different ways to get to a destination, people take different routes to get to where they are in teaching. And I think that someone really needs to hear that message today. Thank you.
And I also share that because for those that are having the success that they envisioned and dreamed and they're in the education program, don't waste the opportunity. Don't take it for granted because, don't skip class and stupid stuff like that. You and I are both also working at the university level. You get to do it with pre-service teachers. I get to do it with people who want to go into the quote unquote real world and work for BuzzFeed and things like that. But I give them the life advice of, there's going to be times you don't want to come to class. Get your butt here, put it in the seat. I'd rather have you in the class with one eye open than not be there at all. So, when there's a lot of root beer and ice cream flowing on a Thursday night, make sure you're there at 8:00 Friday morning.
I like that. You're it's so true for those who are in the program and are, going to classes and doing the work. Put your all into it and don't take that for granted because you never know what could happen. And I think that's a really important message as well. Thank you. So you mentioned that you worked full time and that you also student taught. And I'm sure there's a lot of listeners that might be in the same boat for one reason or another. They need to work full time and they need to, get their student teaching semester finished. If you can remember back to that time, what are some strategies or tips that you have for those who might be in that boat?
It's really simple. Kiss your social life goodbye. And you need to suck it up for the 14 or 15 weeks of that semester and make sure you are present in every moment. So when you're at your school and you're doing your student teaching, be at your school doing your student teaching. If at night you're working in a store or maybe you're a waiter or waitress or bartender, something like that, be present and make sure you're giving your best in every moment wherever you are. And also make sure that you are carving out time on Saturdays and Sundays that you're lesson planning and you're putting in the prep work. Because while you might be working some other job while you're student teaching, remember that your student teaching semester is a semester-long interview of, you can talk about it all you want in the classroom with your cohort and all these things. But once you're out in the classroom and you've got your cooperating teacher and it's you in a room full of 25 to 30 students, you need to give them everything you've got and treat it as if you've been hired to work full-time at that school. And if you treat it like a full-time job that's paying you step one, wherever you are in this country, you're going to get the most out of it. Don't ever call your cooperating teacher and say, I was out too late last night or tonight and I'm not going to be coming in tomorrow. That's not what you want to be doing. That's not the habits you want to be developing, because the kids you have as a student teacher are just as valuable and important and meaningful as the kids you're going to have in year 12. So you need to respect those learners and you need to make sure that it's not a joke. And it goes back to what I said before about, don't take it for granted and don't take advantage of it.
I really resonate with that message, really taking that student teaching seriously. When you are working full-time and student teaching, I would also include in that to let your cooperating teacher or mentor teacher know so they're aware and you have those lines of communication open. So they're aware that you're working also in addition to student teaching, because you don't want that to come up and have it be an issue later.
Well, an important piece of what you just said is it goes to communication. It's not just getting up in front of, the students during your practicum to practice teaching. You need to practice and get experience doing everything that goes with being a teacher. Whether it's those department meetings, the faculty meetings, being observed, having the conversations with your colleagues, and colleague number one to you being the student teacher is your cooperating teacher. So whether you have a good relationship with that individual or not, you need to practice being able to communicate with another professional educator and be able to kind of open up a little bit too.
I agree. I think that that's an incredible skill to have, because you're not only delivering the content in front of 25, 30 students, but you're doing everything else that a teacher does each day with somebody who has your back and who's in your corner. And you won't have that during your first year teaching. You won't have another certified educator in the room with you. Now, you might have one for an observation or something like that, but other than that, you're on your own. So this is the only time that you're going to have someone that's able to give you that feedback, that constructive criticism, and be able to show where you glow and show where you can grow and help develop those skills as a new educator.
And I would even add to be selfish with that whole opportunity. You get one crack at it. To go back to another undergrad story for me, there was a point where I had to do, maybe it was 20 or 25 hours over a semester, where I had to go to a high school and do observations. My log sheet, when I turned it in at the end of the semester, didn't have 20, 25 hours on it. It had like 75, 80. I was there every opportunity I could. I was doing field observations as if I was the full-time teacher, and, was fortunate enough to get partnered with somebody who, I got to do a little teaching and prepare a lesson and do an activity. And, because I knew it was what I wanted, I like a dry sponge soaked up everything I could and was asking questions and tried to go above and beyond, because once you get out into your first full-time job and beyond, it is all you. So get as much out of those support systems as you can. I just had my own student teacher for the first time in the fall of 2018. And he was from Rutgers, and he handed me this calendar, this schedule, and I'm sure you've seen these, Sam, that said, you should take over a block here, and then by this week, you should be teaching full time. And I told my student teacher's name was Luke. I said, Luke, we talked in August, about a year ago now. I said, you're starting on the first day of school. He's like, what? I said, I'll support you. You're going to have an in-class support teacher as well. You start from day one. I'm not going to ease you in because you're in the room. I'm going to make you be present. And he bought in hook, line, and sinker. And I said, you're going to experience the first day of school with support. So that way next year, when you're by yourself, you've already done the first day of school. There's no surprises. You can just rock it and focus on what you want to do. So I basically threw him out of the nest, and, I was there to catch him if he needed, and he did great. Now, not everybody who's listening to this is going to do great if they get that opportunity, but take advantage of the support you have and be coachable. Ask questions, ask the hard questions.
I love that you had said early in that response about your field hours and getting 50 more than you had needed. And I think that's such an important thing to be able to do in your college career. You should be able to knock down the doors of that school building to get in and be with kids if your schedule allows it. If you can get in front of kids and just volunteer your time, do observation, practice teaching a lesson, or doing it, like you said, doing an activity, or maybe do some tutoring after school. The more you can get in front of kids, the better. It's just going to help build your confidence when it comes to student teaching and field work, where you are doing lesson planning and you're in there more often.
And even talking to kids, not just even the teaching piece. When you first walk in, don't try to take over the room. But if you walk in and you feel uncomfortable talking to children, you might have to reevaluate your life's choices to this point. Talking to kids shouldn't scare you. If you want to be a fifth grade teacher and you get placed in a fifth grade classroom, you shouldn't go that whole field experience not talking to the kids.
So in addition to going above and beyond in coursework and helping getting involved with and getting to know the students, that's all kind of becoming an educator of excellence. And this is the EduMagic podcast. We're going to talk a little bit about some areas of EduMagic. Do you want to start with Always Be? What are some strategies or tips you have regarding always being an advocate or mindful or gracious with the students that you're working with, or in the teaching field in general?
To me, it comes down to being a person. Whatever age group you want to teach or work with, they're people. Every student you work with is somebody's child. And we're all just human beings. The teachers you work with, the teachers you teach, the principals, the supervisors, we're all just people. And something that's kind of weighed on my heart in the last maybe 4 or 5 years is the lack of this, what I call the human element in education. And, I pull a little bit from Simon Sinek with this. Ask, if you're going to ask somebody how they're doing and you're not prepared to listen to their answer, don't ask them how they're doing. Listen to people. As a teacher, gone are the days of standing up in front of the class and you imparting knowledge because you're speaking wise words. So being, a lord of the board, that's over. So you need to be out amongst your students. You need to be in the faculty room. You need to be connecting with people. And the better you can connect with people, especially students, the more they're going to learn. The more you show that you care about them as human beings, that's going to benefit them greatly, because at some point somebody's going to stop caring about them, and that safety net's going to go away. But the more you can support them and prepare them, not just through math, science, and social studies, but how to talk and communicate. And if you can show empathy towards students, that's modeling at its best. Depending on where you teach, you don't know what the home life is for some of your students, and based on the community you work in. So the more you can model being a good person, the math, the science, the social studies, that'll take care of itself, because then they'll know that they're cared about, and then they'll want to do well, not only for themselves, but they'll want to do well for you as well.
I love how you started off with just being a human and listening to others, and really being in the moment with somebody and just, listening to them, really hearing what they have to say. And I think that's so important. We do lose that in education. And when you talked about the Lord of the board, that's the first time I've ever heard that phrase. I like it. I love when I go to observe student teachers, and I can't find them because they're not standing at the front of the room. Instead, they're walking around, they're bent down, helping a student at their table, or maybe they're in a small group, they're leading a small group. I think it's so important to see them amongst the students and learning and still managing the classroom from a different viewpoint and a different perspective.
And that's where education is going. I'm currently reading a book called New Power. I apologize, I don't have the author, but it talks about all these examples of this old guarded way of doing most everything in our lives and in society and work. And now there's this new way of doing things, from entrepreneurship and crowdsourcing, and education is changing, and it's kind of a cross section or symbolic of what society is doing. And you got to be willing to change and bring those things to the table, because teaching in a classroom in 2019, 2020 is not the same as, 2000 or 1990. At least I hope it's not.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And I'll be sure to put the link to that book in the show notes so people can check it out. I think that's a really neat resource to rethink how we're teaching and training our students. So let's talk a little bit more about going from being a human and listening and giving people a break, grace and kindness. What about getting out of the classroom? How important is that for our future teachers that are listening today?
Any opportunity you have to get out and, I guess, see what your colleagues are doing and be a part of your school community, that's an investment. The same way somebody's going to tell you to invest in your retirement and, save a little money for, when you can't work anymore. You need to invest in the school community that you're in. And it's kind of like going to church. You don't have to give everything you've got, but every little bit helps. And when you can give. I'm not saying everybody needs to go out and, be the varsity coach or be the club advisor, or, go to every school dance. But when you can, be seen. It goes a long way. Forget what the principal is going to think. It goes a long way with building relationships with your students. And, I've been able to do that, sometimes as a coach through athletics. I've done it as, the public address announcer. I've done it as a club advisor. There are so many ways that you can be involved and, quote unquote, get out of your classroom that are just so valuable to the school community. So And sometimes where there is no opportunity, sometimes you have to make your own opportunity. You know, I like with the podcasting, I did the Donors Choose grant, which I know you're aware of. And there was no podcasting club, but this fall, there's going to be a podcast club at the high school that I teach in. And I'm not getting paid for that. I'm doing it when I can, which just happens to be the 2 days that I will be going to Rutgers to teach my college classes. But I've got a big gap of time between teaching the high school kids and going to teach the night class. So I can run an after school club 2 days a week. It works.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Get involved in your community, get involved in the school. And if there isn't an opportunity, make one. Yes, I love it.
Yeah. You know, whether it's a football game, basketball game, you know, go sit in the stands, grade your papers, read a book, you know, be seen. You know, you don't have to be always getting paid to get involved. And sometimes there are small opportunities to be a ticket taker or, you know, security or something. Just be seen. You know, if you see, maybe you're at the high school or you're at the middle school and there's a fundraiser, go buy that $3 slice of pizza from the debate team. You know, be seen, shake their hand. Just, again, be a human being.
Yes. And the kids, they notice, they see you, and, you know, they'll bring it up. That's something you can talk about as students are coming into class the next day. Hey, I saw you made the winning shot, or you guys made awesome pizza, you know, at the game the other night, or whatever it may be. They notice, and that means a lot.
Yeah.
To them.
Actually, if I could tell a quick, make your own involvement.
Please.
I'm going to tell a story on behalf of my dad, who is still a high school math teacher. He's big into cooking, and at his high school, he actually took the initiative. He did like an Iron Chef competition, and he made up an event and got the world language programs involved. You know, the kids who were taking like AP Spanish or AP Italian, and got the culinary kids involved. And he just made up an event where there would be the ingredients like Iron Chef on the Food Network. And, you know, he played, you know, Morimoto and, you know, did the secret ingredient, and, you know, he created an event to get involved and build community. So sometimes you have to look for those things as well and be creative.
I love that. I've seen other schools do something along the lines of, so you think you can dance, or, you know, stuff like whose line is it anyway? You know, making events that can build that community for the school. That's so cool. I love the Iron Chef idea. Thanks.
Yeah. And if you go to a school dance and you know how to break dance, make a fool of yourself. The kids love it.
And it might be in the morning announcements the next day. You never know.
There you go.
Goals, teacher goals.
Teacher goals.
I know you're the host of the House of EdTech, and we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about technology in this podcast. So what are some ways that future educators can use technology in their student teaching, in their field? Do you have any advice or tips or ways that may be building their confidence when using technology?
A wise podcaster once said, and I quote, "Using technology isn't difficult. Just give it a try." Quote. That's me. So for you who's listening, you're not going to break technology. You're not going to break Google Drive or Google Sheets. You're not going to break Flipgrid. Okay. If you do, they're going to call you and they're going to offer you a job. You know, you don't see technology. People get so caught up in, oh, the kids know more than me, or I'm not good with technology. Please cut that attitude. All right. We expect our students to try new things and fail forward. And we want to create an environment where it's okay to make a mistake and move forward. You don't have to show up in the area of education technology being Steve Jobs and understanding the ins and outs and, you know, the behind the scenes of how everything works and the best way to do everything. What you have to do with your students is show up and try and expose them to things. And if you don't know how to collaborate in Google Docs, well, you got 25 to 30 other human beings who you can learn to do that with, and you will all get better together. So you don't need to show up thinking, I know everything about technology. I certainly don't, because there's a hell of a lot I don't know. But I come with the attitude and the approach of, I want to learn and I'm not afraid to try. It might go horribly wrong, but there is nothing that's going to happen that you can't come back from. And you might make a mistake, right, and your kids will see you make the mistake. And now they're not going to make the mistake, and you won't make that mistake again either. So you can all learn together. And, being on other shows, people will ask me, so hopefully you're not going to ask me for any specific tools or recommendations, because there's more than one way to do everything. There are so many collaborative tools out there. It's important to focus on, collaborating, communicating, and creating. If you're going to put a tool in front of your kids or with your students that's going to help them do that, that's great. If you can show them another way, that's great too. But you don't have to throw at them every collaborative tool under the sun and ask them to use everything out there. If it's just Adobe Spark or it's just Google Docs, they're going to use technology. That's the key. Get them to use it, and don't be afraid to say, I don't know, in front of your kids with technology and really anything.
And that happened to me last semester. I had a lesson planned, and we were going to do something with virtual reality. And then I found on Twitter that morning before class, it was like 7:30. I teach at 8 a.m. I found a thing about Google Tours. And I was like, well, this looks neat. I didn't have time to check it out. And I was like, guys, look, I found this thing. We're going to do this together. We're going to learn how to make an interactive Google tour together about an area that's of interest, or maybe it's the place where a story takes place in a book that your co-op's reading or something like that. We're going to create something really cool. And they did an awesome job. And I honestly, it was a matter of them finding out how to use it. Then I would ask them, well, how'd you do that? And somebody would ask me a question like, you know what? I don't know. I just found the site, but I know someone who does, because someone else in the other row had already figured it out. And that's just that moment of showing your ability to learn more, try something new, and be the student in your own class.
There are times where, I'll find a resource or something to bring in on the way to school, whether I'm listening to a podcast and it just so happens it might fit with what we talked about a day or two ago. I'll bring it in. We'll play it. We'll listen to it. Or, this year I did a lot of faux Twitter chats where I didn't have them, creating Twitter accounts, even at the high school level, or we did like faux Snapchat stuff. And I would find a tool. They'd say, hey, Mr. Nesi, this is blocked. All right, let me do another search and find a tool. Or then I had some of my students. All right, you're on your Chromebooks. You've got the student filter on you. You do a search. Let's see if you can find a tool that you can access, because I have different permissions. So here are some keyword searches you can try and find, and let's 4 or 5 of us work together and find a tool that we can use in class today.
And that just goes back to your first advice, being a human and showing that we're not perfect, and nobody is, and we all make mistakes, but we are better together, and we can really learn and grow from each other.
Yeah, you don't have to be the Michael Phelps of teaching. You don't have to be distinguished every day, every lesson, every year of your career.
Right.
That's not realistic. Even teachers of the year aren't distinguished every day. All you need to do as a teacher for your career is be effective. And there are going to be moments where you are distinguished. There are going to be moments where you are ineffective. But recognizing that and reflecting on it, that's how you're going to grow. If you want to give your listeners a quote, the effective educator is the reflective educator. I would drop my mic, but it's expensive.
I'm sure it is. My colleague always tells me, when we're doing the evaluations of peer-to-peer, that distinguished is a place that you visit. You don't live there. You're on vacation there. You don't live there. So remembering that when it comes to being evaluated is super important. It's super important, especially whenever you're getting evaluated from a supervisor, when you're student teacher and doing some field work, and thinking about some of the areas in which you can grow and asking those hard questions of yourself and of your co-op. What are some ways that I can grow in these areas in which I'm not distinguished? Maybe I'm just proficient with. So what are some ways that I can really help grow that? So next time you're in a teaching situation, you can learn from that situation.
Yeah. Be effective, be proficient. And outside of formal observations, whether they're long observations or short observations, depending on where you are, always be inviting people to come into your classroom. One of my favorite things to do is, see the principal in the hallway or a vice principal or my supervisor and say, hey, I'm trying blank. Would love to see you come in. Here's when I'm doing it between today, tomorrow, or next week. And, I'll follow up with an email. There was I did in social studies like a science fair, but it was like social studies presentations. I went so far as to email the superintendent and the assistant superintendent and set up a Google Hangout that I knew they might not be able to come from central office, which is at a different location, where they could pop in and literally watch in my classroom. I brought the webcam in, and the assistant superintendent checked it out. She was talking to some kids on Google Hangouts, and it was amazing. And my in-class support teacher at times is like, wait, why did you invite so-and-so to come in and see this? We don't know what we're doing. And I'm like, that's fine. I'd rather have them come and see me try something and then, be coachable than, wait till the evaluation. And if I could throw some other advice out there, please don't put on a dog and pony show when you're getting evaluated. Just teach. Don't come up with a special magical lesson that might go horribly wrong. Just plan a lesson. Do what you do, and then just be observed doing it. Please don't make it more complicated. From doing ed tech stuff the last few years or a long time, teachers will always be like, hey, Chris, I'm getting observed on Friday and I want to try blank. And I'm like, oh, well, have you done blank before? And they're like, no, could you show me? I'm like, no, you're getting observed on Friday. Now is not the time to bring in something totally brand new. I was like, if you want to try it before then or after that, let's talk, so things like that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Just have somebody come in and observe and show them what you do each day. Don't go out of your way to make it magical, glittery, and all that other stuff. If that's what you do naturally and that's what you do every day, then go for it. But if you're just going to be putting that in because you're getting observed, then you're not really doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah, I'm going to be doing this coming up on 12 years. And right from day one, I was never into this whole dog and pony show. So it's my classroom. This is how I operate it. These are the lessons I plan. Whether you walk in the room or not, here's what I'm doing. And if you walk in and you have feedback for me, that's great. I'm going to listen, and I present myself as coachable. So that's one of the best pieces of advice I would love to share with your listeners.
Thank you. And I know you shared lots of advice throughout this entire episode. Is there anything else that you feel future teachers should know about when it comes to teaching or professionalism or being a college student and learning the ropes?
As a college student headed for the profession of teaching is put down a lot in our current society here in this country. Do what you can to build it up and be the consummate professional. And this is beyond, solo cups on Instagram and, stupid crap like that. But always carry yourself with dignity and class and represent your profession proudly and do the best you can. And whether this was a podcast for pre-service dentists or, pre-service, construction worker, do the best you can every day. There's going to be days you want to quit. There's going to be days where you can't imagine ever leaving or retiring. So enjoy every moment of your career. And while it's important to take care of your students, also remember that you need to take care of yourself. So self-care, mental health, physical fitness. You and I were talking about me doing and starting CrossFit just before this conversation. And do the things in this world that will make you continue to be happy. And once you're a teacher, you'll always be a teacher, and there's no turning it off. Everything you see might be something you can bring into your classroom, a story you can tell your students, either socially or it might relate to a lesson. So just do the best you can and enjoy every moment.
That's perfect. Thank you. And thank you so much for your time today, Chris. This was a really fun episode. I know my listeners are going to enjoy all the piece of advice that you have sprinkled throughout this episode. Thank you so much for your time. How can everyone find you online?
You can connect with me on Twitter. My username is Mr. Nesi, MRNESI. And my website where you can find the House of EdTech podcast for your listening pleasure. You can find that at chrisnesi.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right, friends, there you have it. Remember, you have the Edu Magic within you.
And there you have it, Edu Magicians. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with your friends. For more EduMagic, check out sfessage.com and follow Dr. Sam on Twitter and Instagram @sfessage. Until next time, you have the EduMagic within you.